Welcome back, folks. This is Tales of Tezlon, episode 6. I wanted to talk to you about the wizards and mages of my world called Majaan, M-A-J-A-A-N. And they harness mana from the world in order to cast spells, or they're called flow spells. So everyone is attuned to magic on the world, but some people are more attuned if they learn to harness and channel the mana. So essentially anybody can become a Majaan if they actually practice, but the majority of the population don't really mess with it. They just kind of go about their daily business, but there are a few that excel at it, and those, they become Majaan, and they become one with the element that they are working with. So a fire Majaan utilizes fire flow spells and can eventually become a fire elemental, and so on with the different elements. I did create, I think, 4 more elements, along with the natural earth, wind, water, and fire. There's also blood, I think blood, corruption, and dark and light. So that type of mana can also be utilized. Corruption is more kind of like for undead and things of that nature. And blood magic utilizes obviously blood and anger type mana that seeps from the world or population. But that's more down the road. I did do a little bit of a previous recording on the chapter about Majaan, so I'm going to put that in here so you guys can listen to that as well. The pictures are various different Majaan sketches and concept ideas that I had. So it varies from race to race. Any race can be a Majaan as long as they practiced the spells and that. And it's good to note that the good Majaan, which aren't Darkbinders, I'll talk about Darkbinders on my next one or later episode, but the Majaan, they borrow, they become one with the element that they're with, and they have a relationship with the elements, and they transfer and channel the mana they need, and then they meditate it back into the environment. So they're recycling it. They're using it for whatever they need to use and cycling it back in. But I'll talk more about that in the actual recording that I did for the chapter. So here we go. Here's the recording. And thanks for stopping in and checking it out.
With the Majaan. A Majaan is basically a wizard or spellcaster or a sorcerer or a magic user. In my world, in my universe, they are called Majaan, spelled M-A-J-A-A-N, which is linked to mana, pretty much. The mana channeler, which is a Majaan, he uses the mana that's directly from the element of his attunement. So the Majaan pulls the mana from the element they are proficient in. Each channeler that has the attunement to mana is able to draw mana into their bodies. It then cycles through, allowing the Majaan to transform the raw mana into a form of magic that needs to be released in the form of flow spells. Beginner Majaan use special attuned mana gems or crystals. This soaks up the raw mana and transfers through their body, allowing them to transform the spells. The body over time adjusts to the mana saturation. Raw mana would break down the Majaan's physical form without proper time to adjust. Thus the use of crystals to absorb the bulk of mana, acting as a conduit. The mana can also be stored into these crystals for a limited time for later use. On the world Tezlon, essentially every person that is born on Tezlon or has lived there for a while is known as a mana born. They have access to the raw mana. Once a mana born, every Tezlonian is born with a certain amount of mana within them. Some, however, have an attunement at an early age. They recognize the magical flows of magic that appear to them. These flows are like snake-like mana that are pulled together by the channeler. The 4 basic mana are developed into the 4 basic elements that we are starting with: earth, water, fire, and air. These are the elements that the Majaan will become attuned to. The beginners become attuned to just one element. As an example, we will use the element of earth spell, Skin of Stone. The Majaan is able to transform a part of himself into stone and rock. He's able to withstand damage or cause damage. A popular among many Majaans is to transform their arms into stone, delivering a punch or creating a weapon extruding from their hands. Targets being struck by the stone, if hit, are stunned momentarily. At higher ranks, the Majaan is able to transform his entire body into an earth and stone elemental, enabling them to attack and defend as if they were an elemental themselves. The basic principle behind the Majaan flow spell casting is essentially broken down into steps. The first step, the Majaan pulls the mana from the element of their attunement. So from the elements around them, they're able to pull flows of mana into them. Now, if they're a beginner, they use crystals that are attuned to withstand the raw mana. So the raw mana is then transferred to the crystal before it enters the Majaan's body. This happens usually in the split second, allowing the transfer of not all the bulk of the mana into them. Once the flows of mana goes into the Majaan, they are able to harness the magic and transform it into a flow spell. The spell is then released from their body at their target or whatever the spell encompasses. After the usage of the mana, either after combat or after the ability is used, the spell ability is used, then the Majaan must meditate, allowing for the unused mana and or other mana they have stored that they do not need back into the element of nature. That way, it creates a balance, allowing the land to regenerate and recuperate from having the mana, how shall we say, borrowed from them. If the mana is not returned, over time the land will die from this, and this is what we like to call a Dark Finder. A Dark Finder is a type of Majaan that has left the traditional school of flow spell casting. And what they do is they draw unlimited mana, raw mana, into their body. Sometimes they have conduit crystals and sometimes they do not, but most of the time the raw mana makes them very powerful. So they keep the channel open and they keep channeling and pulling the mana from the land. They do not replace it. This kills the land quicker, but also gives them unlimited power, casting very powerful spells. But the downside is it deteriorates their body. This is why the beginner mana, the Majaan, allows the saturation of mana through the conduit of the crystals. Darkfinders do not do that. Thus, that's why most Darkfinders don't live very long and or have to transfer to another body. But mostly those Darkfinders are possessed by Divan dragons, which acts like a symbiote, which feeds off the mana, the raw mana, allowing them both to work together. But we'll discuss that at a later time.